what I consider to be a piece of art. And I may be completely mistaken, but nevertheless. And I'm going to use literature, okay? Any of you in this class have ever read the biography of Malcolm X? Just one, okay. So I'm just going to give you a very, very brief version of it, just to kind of demonstrate what a work of art really, really is. And by the way, for those of you who want to see a living, quacking work of art, come to my class on Mondays and Wednesdays. I have a student who's about 72 years old. Okay. At a very, very young age, he became addicted to various drugs. And he remained an addict for about 20, 30, 40 years. Okay. And then something really strange happened to him. He said he just doesn't like the way he is anymore. Do you know what it means to overcome an addiction, a habit, a ritual? Imagine you've been a Christian for like 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and all of a sudden you say, no, no more. You know how difficult it is to look at your cell phone, delete all of your Christian friends, never again go to church, never again read the Bible, never again think religiously about anything, because you've been in the habit of doing it. And so what you have is a human being, a man in my class on Mondays and Wednesdays, 72 years of age. He was homeless. He was addicted. He was suicidal. He had so many issues. And it took him about 20 years to overcome it. That is a work of art. You know, here you are as an infant, a blank canvas. Society craps all over you. Your parents, if they happen to be unhealthy, crap all over you. Your own emotions, if you happen to process experiences in the wrong way, you begin to some extent, self-destruct. And you kind of just live this way for a long, long time. For those of you in this class whose rooms are cluttered, is a mess, I mean, go to a room and try to get rid of things. It is so difficult because you're attached to a jacket you haven't worn for like 10 years, or shoes you haven't worn for 5 years. You say they have sentimental value. And I'm just talking about physical items that you can replace, get rid of easily. If you and I have such difficulty just getting rid of something so simple, imagine a man who's been on drugs for about 30 years. Now, so let me kind of go into this fairy tale real quick, because you don't really find very many people like Malcolm X. They are no longer found. There is one, Angela Davis, who lives near me, and my aunt just interviewed her, and she gave a 2-3 minute talk because of the women in Iran. And I don't know if those of you in this class have kept up with the news. Women are rising up, good for them, and they are fighting a regime that has oppressed them for the past 35, 40 years. So, so when we talk about Malcolm X, keep in mind that this is not an ordinary human being. It's the stuff you find in Harry Potter stuff. It's magic, pure magic, okay? Is this something you guys are interested in, or should I just move on to something different? Do you have any other questions or comments? Should I stick to this? Or should I just hear some questions before doing Malcolm X and then moving on? Anyone? No one? The story of Malcolm is really, really interesting. And for those of you who are having or going through difficult times, my recommendation is this. Not only pay attention to, what we're going to say about him today, but go home and read the book, because it demonstrates human potential. That despite everything being against you, everything, there is something about us human beings that can overcome a good amount of dysfunction and filth in our lives. We have that capacity. In the Hindu tradition, they liken the human being. They say the human being is like a lotus flower. Now, let me say a couple of things about the lotus flower and where it's born and grown. There is a place in Sacramento, I think it's called the Vivekananda Center. It's kind of like a church, but for the Hindus. It's called an ashram. And they've had it, it's been there for, I think, 50 years or so. And there is a section, it's a huge place. It's about maybe 6 or 7 or 10 acres. That there is this pool of water. It's dirty. It's smelly. But at certain moments, certain points in the season when you go there, there is this beautiful flower that comes out of this dirty pool of water. It's called a lotus flower. The stem is like this illuminated green, and the petals, the flower itself is immaculate white. It's kind of like, you know, her jacket. It is amazing. And you sit back and you ask, how could such a beautiful flower come out of this pool of water that you don't even want to look at? Okay? And so the story of Malcolm X is very much like that. You have an environment that's messy, that's chaotic, and yet out of this messy and chaotic physical as well as internal environment, you have the blossoming of a prophet. Right? His parents are religious people. Okay? But we're also talking about a time where the dominant culture, the dominant thought, the dominant notion of beauty is decided by one single group, and that's Caucasians. That's just the way the culture was. This is not a blame game. Remember, all of us in this class eventually want to belong. And in belonging, you find confirmation, you find validation, you find meaning, identity, purpose. Okay? If you can't belong to something, you feel alienated. You feel alone. If you don't know what that means, it's like this. You have all the stuff inside you, and you need to share the emotions inside with someone. You talk to your dad doesn't get it. You talk to your mom doesn't get it. You talk to your friends don't get it. You write in your journal, but the words don't come out the right way. So what do? You sit, turn off the lights, cry, and you feel all alone. You feel alienated, isolated. And like Job, the book of Job in the Old Testament, you say to yourself, why was I born? Why doesn't the earth open up and swallow me? I don't want to be alive anymore. Why? Because you feel so much, and yet there is no adequate outlet. So remember, the story of Malcolm X is not really just about Malcolm X. It's about all of us in this class who have difficult lives. We suffer, we are isolated, alienated. Society imposes itself upon us, oppresses us. And yet Malcolm says, there is something about being a human being. We can overcome anything and everything. Don't count yourself out. Okay? Let's just say at the age of 5, Malcolm and his siblings and his parents are just sleeping. They hear the sound, this noise. It's loud. A couple of people break into this house. They grab their father. And they lynch him in front of his family. You know, it's one thing to go out and see a stranger get shot or see a stranger get beat up. You simply sit back and watch it. And if you're really, really kind of mean-spirited, you say, yeah, no, you missed the stomach. Kick him in the stomach. But if it's someone that you like, if it's someone you're intimate with, if it's someone you care for, I don't know how anyone can tolerate it, stand it, cope with it. Okay? So the first thing that you need to know is the following. Why do we have a home? Because it's a safe environment. And hopefully you have parents who keep you safe, who make you feel safe. You have siblings and you love them and you care for them. It's a very close-knit community. And why do we put a lock on our doors? And it's a really relatively new invention for us, because in the 1960s or 70s, there were no locks on any houses. So as society gets worse, we need more security. Okay? So why do we put a lock on our door? Because subconsciously, we feel as if there are people out there, forces out there, that are a threat, that could violate our privacy, our safety, could bring harm to our wives, to our husbands, to our children. Be clever. Don't just read and pass them by. Every word, every single word is there for you to open up and see what's inside. Okay? Now, if Malcolm had an awful relationship with his father, like some of us in this class may do, I hope not, but just in case you do, there are moments you desire or wish or hope or dream for the worst things to happen to your father. But Malcolm loves his dad. Now imagine if you love someone and you see them slowly, you see life slowly coming out of them. And all that's left after a few minutes is just this lifeless corpse. How's that going to make you feel? You know, I'm a 60-year-old man. If my father was to die, I will cry. But I am old enough to process the experience. It's not going to stay here like a lump, unprocessed. I may be angry, I may be sad and depressed, but I'm old enough, mature enough not to take my anger and depression on anyone. Will it disrupt my life? Absolutely. Will I accidentally scream at my wife because there's a lot of pent-up pressure inside me because a father who I've known for 60 years is no longer there? Definitely. Do I have the insight and maturity to look at my wife and say, I apologize? I certainly hope so. It doesn't mean I won't slip. Every single one of you in this class have the maturity. When you do something wrong, you go to the person that you have transgressed and say, listen, I apologize. And there's a sense of self-respect and respect for your friend and the history you've created with your friend. You have dignity in it, all right? I am not sure how a 5-year-old deals. And I'm not talking about a heart attack. I'm not talking about a car crash where your father is speeding really fast. I'm not talking about your father being drunk and speeding really fast. I'm talking about you being in a very, very safe environment. Someone breaking into your house, by force grabbing your father. You scream. Go back to the painting by Edward Munch. You scream. You want help. You want people to become slightly more aware that yes, on the outside, they may be black or brown or blue or white. But what did Shakespeare say? If you cut us, do we not bleed? If you pinch us, do we not hurt? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? These basic components of human nature, they transcend race, ethnicity. It's what they call simply being a people, being a human being. So you have a 5-year-old who sees his father dead. What do you do? What do you do with the anger? What do you do with the thing that you have just seen? Let me tell you a story, a quick digression. About 30 or so years ago, I was sitting having a Subway sandwich, and the phone rings. It's my friend, a friend I play music with, and sometimes we sing. He says to me, "My son passed." What are you talking about? My son passed. Passed? He was 17. How did he pass? I picked him up from the basketball court. We were driving home. He says, "Dad, can we have round table?" I said, "Sure." So he turns around, goes towards round table, and all of a sudden, his son, his heart gives. He rushes to the hospital, but by the time they arrive, he's pronounced dead. And so in our culture, 5 of us, 5 people are chosen to go to the mortuary to wash the body. The body's on a white plastic bed, 5 buckets of scented water, and we spend the next 2, 3, 4 hours washing this corpse from head to toe. And as we are washing this corpse, I was very young, okay? And when you're young, you're very impressionable. Things impact you much more intensely, okay? You know, when you, for example, forgive this example, if you slap a 3-year-old, he or she will cry. But if you slap the same 3-year-old who's now 25, they'll probably hold the tears back. So when you're young, you're very impressionable. You have no shame to express who and what you are and how you feel. And so after washing the corpse, I go back to the car wash. And I feel as if I'm no longer myself. Because while washing the corpse of a 17-year-old young man, I say to myself, how do we stay alive? What is it that keeps us going? Where does life go? What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of death? And then when the son is being buried, the mother is wailing. She's screaming. At least she was lucky enough to be around 20, 30, 40, 50 people that she could scream and the rest of us could hear. Okay? It was pain in community, not pain in solitary. Now, Malcolm and his siblings, they all watch, they all witness this episode. They all turn around and they realize that there is, in fact, a support system. Hello, Jackie. How are you? It has been a while. You're like Santa Claus. Or maybe I should say you're like an angel. You just kind of descend time to time to save my soul. It's good to see you, Jackie. Alex, Cole, Eli. Ivy, I mean. Allahu Akbar. When you lose your father, or when you lose your mother, you turn around and you realize the other parent is there as a support system. You're still grieving because it's a great loss. Okay? But you find the cradle of your mother profoundly comforting. It brings you calm and peace. Now imagine if you're a 30-year-old mother and you're raising 4 or 5 or 6 kids. Even if your husband was relatively dysfunctional, he would at least take out the garbage. Once in a while, you could at least tell him, can you stop by Safeway and grab some milk and some bread and some eggs? He would have some function, some utility. But now even that is gone. So as a mother, you realize you have to raise 4 or 5 or 6 kids. Do you have money? No. Do you have education? No. Do you have very much power in life? No. And what happens when any one of us in this class is pushed into poverty? Physical poverty, emotional poverty, intellectual poverty. You know, you may assume that you have it all together. Then you come to class, you raise your hand and you make a comment or ask a question, and I challenge you. And all of a sudden you realize that all the things you knew is not enough to combat me, to go toe-to-toe with me. And what happens under the avalanche of challenge? You crumble. What happens to your intellect? You realize you're poor in information, in experience, in expression. Are you going to feel happy? Of course not. You're going to feel miserable. You're going to wait for me outside with a couple of your buddies with a baseball bat. That's how people usually function when they fall into poverty. They feel despair and lonely. Okay? After a while, this mother of 5 or 6 or 20 comes to realize it's just too much. First, I have to deal with the grief of having watched my husband lynched. And in front of my kids. Now I gotta put bread on the table. How much and how long do you think it'll take before any one of us in this class cracks? You and I can only take so much abuse. Remember when you ask a question in class, and if the question has a good amount of emotional intensity behind it, what you're saying, without really saying it, is the following. I try to reason this out with my partner or companion or my boss. I try to deal with it in solitude by reading, by writing, by thinking. None of them are helpful. I raise my hand and I ask my question in class because I need help. You no longer find yourself self-sufficient. So after a while, Malcolm's mother, under an avalanche of pressure, cracks. You need money to do therapy. What do you and I do to forget our problems? If you happen to be Karl Marx, knowing the capitalistic system and what it does to the human psyche and human life and society, he says the only way people can feel alive, can remove themselves from despair and loneliness, you drink, you smoke, and you have sex. Malcolm's mother turned to drugs. You have kids depending on you. What do the kids do? After a while, the kids are taken and they're put in foster care. We haven't even talked about what it means to be African American in America. And all the pressure that one feels if you happen to be a person of color. We haven't even talked about it. I'm just talking about just a kid. Not only has he seen his father being lynched, he also seen his mother slowly suffocate under drug abuse. And then the siblings that you know and you have known for a long, long time, you can no longer see them. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Good. That's a nice sweater. Is it new? Who gave it to you?
I bought it.
Looks good. You work today? Oh, that's right. Okay. Jackie. You know, Malcolm then started going to school. What happens when you have tasted love in your life and care and attention, and then circumstances rob all of those things away from you? When you have something, but all of a sudden you lose them. You have memories, and you long for those memories to come back to life. And Malcolm found that in school. He found that love and care and attention in a teacher who once asked him, "So Malcolm, what is it that you want to do with your life?" And he says, "I want to be a lawyer." And this teacher looks at Malcolm and says, "You are the N-word. Society will never allow you to be a lawyer. In fact, you're not worthy to be a lawyer." Do you know what happens when your faith in people and your trust in people and your care for people gets cracked at the age of 5 or 6 or 7? And then very heroically, you open up and you say, "I will trust again. I will love again. I will care again." Do you know how much of your own self you have to overcome? Only to hear your teacher looking at you saying, "You're not worth that much." I'm just giving you some components. How a tiny little kid gets beaten up again and again and again and again. And yet something amazing happens to his life later on. For those of you who came in late, again, remember, the story of Malcolm X is our story. Life has only one function: abuse, harass, and brutalize us. Never count yourself out. That's the message of the story. Matters very little how lonely you are, how depressed you are. Find the resources. Those resources are like a rope. Hang on to them. Get yourself out. It'll take time, but you can do it. Okay? You got no dad. You got no mom. You got no siblings. You will no longer go to school because you had hopes and dreams all crushed by your teacher. What do? What, you go work in and out? What's the easiest way you can make money? What's the easiest way you can gain power? Because without power in life, you can't do anything. Abigail didn't come to class Thursday. I asked her why. I was sick. Sick equals poverty, absence of health. No health, can't get out of bed. Can't get out of bed, can't come to class. That's poverty. It doesn't matter how much you desire to be here. That poverty will keep her in bed, far away from class. So remember, to accomplish anything in life, you need power. You guys should read this book that came out some years ago. It's called Gang Leader for a Day. This Indian guy at the University of Chicago, he was doing his PhD. He had to write this long essay. And when you're in the PhD program, it has this fancy name called a dissertation. But it's really just a Long essay that really means nothing. But you have to do it nevertheless because we all have to play some games at different stages in life. So he goes to his advisors and says, I want to write my essay on the projects. And the advisor looks at him and says, you're brown, you're Indian. You want to go in that environment? They will kill you.